Roundabouts and Firewood, a mental health approach for Irish guys. Chapter 24. The Irish Boys Are All Right. In July of 2022, on my way home from dinner, the phone rang. It was 8 p.m. American West Coast time, 4 a.m. Irish time, and 5 a.m. Spanish time. Of course, it was Kian. He normally called without video, but on this occasion, he wanted visuals. Dah. What's up, Kian? Look. Kian had the camera pointed at his thigh. On it was a small tattoo. What it said, what it meant, I wasn't certain. He lifted the camera so I could see his face, and then he turned it to one of his friends who, late in the evening of drunkenness, agreed with Kian that they should get a tattoo to commemorate the post-Leaving Cert holiday in Magaluf. My son then pointed the camera to the three others who had made the trip, and while they hadn't gotten ink etched onto their legs, they made it clear with shouts into the phone that they were in full support of Kian's decision. No 5 young men could have looked happier, could have looked more pleased with themselves, could have looked drunker, and yet still had the ability to walk. Kian held the phone back up to his face. I asked, out of concern, "Did you guys get the tattoo at a safe place?" "We got it at the safest place you could find at 3 in the morning," was his response. He then handed the phone to his friends, who let me know that everything was grand. It was time for them to seek out food, go for a swim, and find an early morning music party. At that moment, those 5 friends couldn't have been closer. Criticize things about Ireland, and everyone in the country does, but the culture produces male bonds that are unique. Back in 2006, the second time I taught in an Irish school, I was walking down the hall when I saw a 5-year-old boy sitting on a chair outside of his junior infant's classroom. He had a cross, somewhat defiant look on his face. I asked him, "Why are you sitting out here?" With a scowl, he said, "I was being cheeky." I had never heard the term before, and a 5-year-old with a sharp Kerry accent made it sound even better. "Is being cheeky a bad thing?" I asked. He nodded. Indeed, being cheeky was not a good thing in the primary classroom. Of course, bold is the most frequent term used by teachers and mothers. If your mother or female primary teacher is particularly upset with your behavior, they stand over you, inflate themselves up with a look of disapproval and say, "You, fill in your name here, are being very, very bold." I worked with Irish primary schools for 16 years, and early on I noticed something about the boys. In 5th class, the word bold provoked instant boredom. No longer did the word have the desired effect. If a 5th class teacher opted to read her students the riot act and then called them out for being bold, the boys invariably bit their lips, trying to conceal their laughter. Yes, it's at the age of 11 that the mythical force of that word loses its power, and, in general, so does the female reprimand. By 6th class, the boys mainly hang out with other boys, and the bonds between them begin to solidify. They've broken free from most of the shackles that have restrained them, and now it's just waiting. Waiting to take the junior cert, waiting to finish secondary school so they can go to work, waiting for the Leaving Cert results so they can choose their university courses, and waiting to get on with life. In all this waiting, Irish lads become more dependent on each other, as it is these friendships that will become their second family. It is these friendships that they will rely on the rest of their lives. They will go off to the States for a summer together. They will go off on a holiday in various parts of Europe. They will have sessions at the pub, and if they have a GAA, soccer, rugby, or tennis match the next morning, the lads will play it hungover. Some will go to Magaluf and get commemorative tattoos while drunk. They'll do it together. Because Irish lads will lean on each other, it is Irish lads who can best help their friends go to battle with mental problems because Irish guys understand Irish guys. As previously said, it's about action. And oh, how I witnessed Irish boys taking action day in and day out in primary schools. Chapter 25, Striking Back, the Boy Model. Every day that I went to work in Ireland from 2006 to 2021, I arrived at a primary school with a box. Inside the box were some simple materials that students would use to accomplish engineering tasks. One of the things I had the students design and build were roller coasters. It was during a roller coaster lesson at a school in Wicklow that I gave some girls advice. After sending students to their 4-person group to complete the third roller coaster challenge, 2 fourth-class girls came up to me, and one of them said, "Mr. Z, I know you told us that you won't help us, but the other 2 girls in our group won't listen to anything we say and only make the roller coaster the way they want to do it. Do you have any suggestions?" Normally, my response to such a situation were the 3 words, "Not my problem." It's something I always tell the students. Your group, your engineering challenge, your problem. This was the 4th lesson in 4 weeks that I had had with this classroom of students. And the previous 3 lessons, these 2 girls had proven to be hard workers who worked well with the others in their group, and they had always placed in the top 3 of the lesson-ending competition. I wasn't going to help them, but I could introduce them to a conflict resolution approach. Have you considered doing what the boys do when they try to reason with their partners and it doesn't work? The 2 girls looked at each other and exchanged confused looks. They looked back at me and shook their heads. I raised my right hand up next to my left cheek and then yanked my arm down to demonstrate how to throw an elbow. A sharp elbow to the ribs usually works for the boys. Again, the girls looked at each other, trying to determine if I was serious. "It's okay if we do that?" "Well, if a teacher sees you hit someone, you'll be in trouble. But when you go back to your group, I'm going to go put some of the materials out for the next challenge, so I won't see anything, and I'm the only teacher in the room." Still puzzled, one of them asked, "So you're saying we should throw an elbow at one of our partners?" "I'm just explaining what seems to work in Ireland with the boys. I've seen it work hundreds of times." They giggled at each other and walked away. I went over to the materials station and kept an eye on the pair. They both got on the floor and said something to the girl adjusting the roller coaster. When the girl shook her head in disagreement, she was met with an elbow slamming into her shoulder. The recipient of the elbow fell back, stared in apparent shock that this had just happened, and then went and sat on the bench to pout, which she did for the next 30 minutes. Her friend, who had been standing up, got on the floor and decided it was time to listen to new ideas. The trio formed a new group of sorts, and they ended up finishing second in the competition because they had learned to work with each other. At the end of the lesson, after the students cleaned up the materials and I explained what we were going to be doing next week, the 2 girls who had sought my advice came up to me, and one said, "You're right, it worked. Look, you tried to reason with them, but sometimes it just takes action. The boys are on to something." Fuck it before it fucks you. With that one sentence, it should be clear that the way to respond to mental health problems is to take action. If there's one thing I observed leading engineering lessons for 16 years in Ireland, it's that the boys take action and are encouraged to do so. Did the boys always listen to the objective that I set out? No. Did they always talk and listen to each other when working in groups? Hardly ever. But after giving them the objective and telling them to get started, the boys jumped in, got to work, and plowed ahead. The willingness to jump in and plow ahead is what 99% of dealing with your mental issues is all about.